All right, well, welcome everyone. I'll let additional attendees trickle in as we move forward this morning. Welcome to our Core CM Workforce Training webinar, focused on challenges, strategies, and partnerships on that topic of workforce development. My name is Davin Bagdonis. I am the project lead for the Greater Green River Basin and Wind River Basin Core CM project. I'm joined today with my colleague, Dr. Aaron Phillips, who leads the Powder River Basin effort for Core CM. And then, of course, our experts here on workforce development, our panelists, who will be sharing their information with us and discussing this topic with us today. Those of you not familiar with Core CM or learning more about Core CM, we thank you for your time today and attending this. As we work on these projects in our regions of both the Powder River Basin and Green River Basin, Wind River Basins, we have a myriad of tasks to cover to be successful in our planning for Core CM to meet the needs of that initiative from the U.S. Department of Energy. We're excited to work on this because it does bring experts together from across the region in many different topics. And we look at resource assessments, we look at technologies, we plan around developing new industries and supply chains in our region. Coal-based resources, we bring together the energy sector. And if we consider developing or proposing new pathways, as we're supposed to do in the Core CM projects, workforce development and training is obviously a key facet of that. It's a significant part of the project. Anything we're doing in industry, anything we're doing in this planning, we need this expertise to be successful. So I'm very excited to have the panelists we have here today. We have folks from the U.S. Department of Energy National Energy Technology Lab. We have community representatives, Wyoming Department of Workforce Service experts, and community college experts on the subject. So I feel like we've covered most of the details in that effort with this team of experts. And rather than have me yammer on, since I'm not a workforce training expert, I will pass this to our team so that we can use our time wisely today in gaining information on this topic. I will say our first speaker, Anthony, who is with National Energy Technology Lab, has a little bit of a restricted timeline. So as he presents first, we will open some initial questions as soon as he's done speaking. We will then allow the rest of the panelists, our other speakers, to speak in series, present in series, and we'll open up the end of the webinar for a question and discussion section for around 30 minutes at the end. So if you'll bear with us, we'll have Anthony present quick questions, and then we'll have the rest of the presentations. I will shamelessly advertise an up-and-coming event with the Core CMs. We have the annual forum for the Green River Basin and Wind River Basins coming up on October 20th. That will be hosted with our Western Wyoming Community College partners out in Rock Springs, Wyoming. We have information on our website, the SCR website. We also will be sending out additional emails and reminders. I would encourage all of you, if at all possible, to attend that event. We're expecting some good discussions there, including workforce training topics. So without further ado, I will pass the presentation on to Anthony and our first speaker today. And thank you again for attending, everybody.
Okay. Hey, Devin, can you hear me okay?
Yep, sounds great. Thank you.
All right. Hey, everyone. My name is Anthony Armley. I am the federal coordinator for the Regional Workforce Initiative. This is out of the National Energy Technology Laboratory. We're one of the Department of Energy's 17 national labs. We're the only government-owned, government-operated laboratory in the DOE complex. So today I'm going to give you an introduction to our place-based initiative centered around Regional Workforce Initiative, and I'll take questions at the end. So in 2017, we kicked off this initiative following the administration's priorities for a couple of reasons: upskilling Americans, promoting STEM in the workplace, and then increasing knowledge and opportunities surrounding energy and advanced manufacturing sectors. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how we started this and how we've grown it to what it is today, and I'll talk about some key accomplishments that we've had in the last couple of years. Next slide, please. So our mission for this regional workforce initiative is an extension to our labs initiative. We're trying to get technologies to market. However, we focus on the Appalachian region, where we have a very strong group of stakeholders from all sectors: academia, government agencies, workforce development boards, economic development type groups, and just industry, utility sector, et cetera. So we're using this platform to engage, share information, and really just have an ongoing conversation consistently. Next slide. So this slide is the metrics that we track on our growth in our how we've had as far as engagement goes. So when we started this, these numbers were essentially zeros. In 5 years, roughly 5 years, we've grown our individual stakeholders well over 800, which represents over 400 different institutions or organizations. In the past year alone, we've had over 1,100 people register for our various webinar series, which I'll talk about here momentarily. And then we have a monthly e-note where I believe we've actually crossed the 300 person enrollee, metric there. And I'll share the link to our website in the chat right now. If anybody's interested in registering for our monthly e-note, you can go to this website, netl.doe.gov/business/RWFI. It's in the chat here. If you scroll down about halfway, there's a button. You just click that, and it adds you to our monthly e-note. In that e-note, you'll find tons of funding opportunity announcements. We have a section about workforce trends in energy and advanced manufacturing. We put in there each month any news, high-level newsworthy items that come out of our lab that people might be interested in. We do some research on rare earth elements. So this group that's on here today might have an interest in some of the articles that we put out about that. And then any upcoming events that we have, we always try to advertise in our monthly e-note. But the biggest thing with these metrics is it shows you the growth that we've had. We're trying to share what we do at NETL, why it's important, opportunities for jobs in the future based on the technologies that we develop and try to get to market, and then what unique skills might be needed to support those jobs in the future. As these numbers grow, we feel the impact of this initiative amplifies. Next slide, please. So we're currently in a pretty big shortfall when it comes to skilled labor. Over 3 million technical workers. There's jobs, but there's not bodies with the skills to fill them. And so our recommendation is to follow a regional partnership or coalition type of environment. And that's really what this regional workforce initiative is. It's trying to build regional teams to bring on partnerships, to address skills gaps, and collaborate by sharing of resources. And I think what we've done in these 5 years has really helped. Next slide, please. We do this, again, by consistent engagement and output. We host consistent webinars. We try to do them monthly, but they don't always work out that way. We just had one earlier this morning on direct air capture, where we took a technical topic, introduced it at a very high level, talked about the future of jobs, what the industry in direct air capture might look like, unique skills that could be needed. And one of the interesting things that we found is, so you would think the technologies that a national lab is developing, right? You'd think you would mostly think, okay, you're going to need a lot of high-level academic type of skills, master's degrees, bachelor's degrees, et cetera. But what we found and what we've continued to prove is the technologies that are coming out of the lab that have a job to them at the end, there's a broad mix of skills needed. Okay, so welders, electricians, HVAC techs, but also, chemical engineers, for example, mechanical engineers. So a broad range of skills are needed to support these new modern technologies coming out of the lab that have, an opportunity for jobs in the future. So it takes a whole team effort. It takes training from all levels. It takes networking from all levels, et cetera. So other things we do as part of this, we host lab visits, and anybody on this call that is ever in the Pittsburgh or Morgantown, West Virginia area, feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to host you on a lab tour, talk to you personally about what we do. and that's really a big part of this is the networking so that people are aware and of our capabilities, our expertise, and what's coming down the pipe. So we do tons of lab tours. We host meetings on site. We go to various events and network with our stakeholders. Next slide. So our regional workforce initiative, it's regional really in focus, but we feel we have a national reach. Today is a good example of that, where I'm talking to you all about our regional workforce initiative, but from a group that's pretty far away, out in the Mountain Time Zone. I'm based in Pittsburgh, like I said, Eastern Time Zone. So again, our stakeholder group includes many different groups, industry, different levels of government, national labs, workforce or other NGOs, economic development organizations, utility sector. So we have conversations all over the country with different groups in those different sectors. Slide. Key outcomes to date. One of the things that I think has been a pretty big noteworthy accomplishment to date is just the establishment of a new network of regional stakeholders, folks that we never really worked with in the past. In the past couple, in most recent years, they've started to get involved with us consistently on some of these efforts with our workforce initiative, which has led to many new partnerships. We're going in on a big proposal right now under an FOA that recently came out. And there's like 4 or 5 different partners with NETL. And I want to say 3 or 4 of those are people that have networked with us from this initiative. So again, it's like opportunities for collaboration may not have come out if we didn't have this initiative. Other things like the integration of the workforce work plan, which I'll talk to you here in a moment about, increased communication of what we do at NETL and why it's important. And then again, this consistent engagement with key regional partners, and really we could almost start saying the national partners, because that's how much our reach has started to expand to. Slide. So now I'm going to start talking about some of the accomplishments that we've achieved in the past couple of years. So one of them is we kicked off a new group. It's the Regional Advanced Manufacturing and Energy Innovation Group. We hosted a meeting, Directors Roundtable in Pittsburgh about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And we brought in all kinds of stakeholders. I believe there was 60 plus stakeholders from our region. And we just had an open conversation with them about opportunities for, working together, areas for improvement with NETL, areas for branding the region. And so we came up with 5 themes and questions that came from that meeting. And what we found was there was issues people had where they didn't even know how to work with the labs. They didn't know how to go out and find funding opportunities. They didn't know how to, one of the issues was, well, we had some stakeholders that were interested in working with us, but they said there's red tape. It's like when you go put a cooperative research and development on contract with NETL, they can't wait 6 to 9 months for that to happen. So we took a lot of this information back and we said, all right, let's break down each of these. Let's have a quarterly meeting where we touch on each topic, and let's provide a platform for the region to provide updates to others on what they're doing in this energy and advanced manufacturing space. So we've had 5 or 6 of these meetings now. Again, each one we have a new theme based on the questions or the topics that were addressed in that initial meeting. And we bring in new people each time, and they give basically 10 minutes to introduce to the region what they're up to. So we've had huge companies, small companies, universities, community colleges, and different economic development groups that have joined us and really networked. It's interesting, some partnerships have come from that group alone, just by presenting some efforts that they have underway or interest in the future on different funding opportunities that have come out. One of the areas we've addressed from that is they said 6 to 9 months to put the cooperative research and development agreement on contract. We went back and said, look, we're losing opportunities to partner with stakeholders because they don't want to wait that long. So we were able to revise that process, cut it down to 2 to 3 months. And so that itself is a win. I could go on, but I'm limited here with time. Next slide, please. Another area that's a key accomplishment is this workforce training 1.0. So we identified a need where there's a direct need for jobs, and that's with advanced welding, which aligns to NETL, one of our campuses out in Albany, Oregon, where we do material development, advanced material research. And so when you think about power plants of the future, they use lighter weight, stronger lasting, corrosion resistant, just more suitable for power plants of the future. That's just one example. But we have these new materials, and when you weld them together, it takes different techniques, maybe modern techniques, if you will. And so we created this training program in Appalachia where we sent $750,000 to the Appalachian Regional Commission. They matched with another $250,000 and put out a funding opportunity announcement for $1 million. There was 5 awardees across the Appalachian region. And this training's been underway for, I want to say a couple months now. I'll say 3 to 4 months it's been underway. There's been more women than ever that have enrolled in 3 of the 5 tech schools for this program than any of their other trades prior to this combined. So that's a huge thing. I think there's people from substance abuse recovery that have enrolled in this program. I believe it's a 6-month program. It's 100% covered with the funding, and it's linked to a direct job right at the end. There's also displaced coal workers who are looking for new opportunities for good paying jobs that have enrolled in this. So we're super proud of it. We're talking about what could the workforce training 2.0 look like. An idea we have is a grid modernization tech program that would touch on 8 to 10 different careers or occupations. And we're starting to socialize that with different players in our region. This is something I think in FY23 that might come out. Another area that we've talked about could be the critical minerals, critical materials, rare earth elements. I think in the future, it kind of aligns with this group, is there's going to be an opportunity for jobs. And so I think in the future, that could be another area of emphasis for training. But the key is you want to have it tied to a direct job, right? If we're going to put forth the money and the resources to train folks, we want them to be able to come out with a job. So we're super proud of this. This advanced welding training touches on different sectors: energy, automotive, aerospace, aviation, and even the petrochemical industry. So it's not just tied to, power plants of the future. That was just one example I had for you. Next slide. Another accomplishment is this development of our workforce readiness plan. So any technology at our lab that's 3 to 5 years from commercialization, we've created this workforce readiness plan that basically has a series of 4 questions. What are the unique skills that this technology has that could be tied to a job? Is there availability or accessibility of training programs currently? Any ongoing or planned collaboration with education or training providers? Any necessary certifications that could be needed or other educational attainment in this technology? And then lastly, we ask that the project manager or the technology manager identify any economically distressed community or opportunity zone that could define empowerment zones where this activity may occur. So if you go to the next slide, this is an example of what this database shows. So under this pilot program last year, we had 58 unique identifiable occupations that came as this. This is just a sample, what you can see on the screen here. Geology, big data program analyst. So these are careers that exist already, but what we are doing is taking any unique skills that we're finding from the technologies that we're developing that could be needed. So we can basically take this information, share it with all of the training providers that are in our network, and say, hey, you might have an example, construction management program that you've trained for the last 10 to 15 years the same exact way. We're getting new data in that we think we can share with them that might allow them to adapt their curriculum 3 to 5 years in advance. That way, when these folks that they're training come out, they have modern skills that these employers are looking for. I'm on a couple workforce development boards across the national labs. And what I've heard from utilities and industry is that on average, 6 months, when they hire somebody new, that they typically have to train them up on because they don't have the exact skill sets they're looking for. So we think this can bridge that gap. We think if we can start working together collaboratively to provide modern skills to the trainers, they can update their curriculum to bridge that gap. Now, it'll never be perfect, but if we can make that 6-month time frame of where they have to train them, drop it down to 1 to 3 months, that's a big win, and that makes a big difference. Slide, please. So just the pilot conclusions from this program was a skilled technical workforce is essential, even for the technologies coming out of the laboratories. Technical workforce occupations are very in demand and high paying. Energy and advanced manufacturing industries are rapidly evolving towards highly skilled, and they're looking for people that have experience. So that aligns to the people that have been displaced from other industries, that have transferable skills. We're starting to work on a matrix that has transferability of skills across different sectors. So when you talk about clean energy jobs, what skills do people from the natural gas industry or coal industry have that could, support these clean energy jobs? And so that's something, even like hydrogen or possibly rare earth elements could be touched on that. So it's something that I think is going to be really highly in demand, this matrix of skills across sector that we're hoping to touch on next year as we continue to develop this further. So again, just lastly here, this workforce work plan, we feel it's an effective tool in identifying not only the emerging skills and occupations, but giving an early warning to the trainers about what's coming down the pike, what industry and the utility sector are looking for, et cetera. Slide. So how can we make this better? Well, last year was our pilot program, first time, and we found 58 unique occupations. So we're going to add to that this year once we get all the new data in for FY22. But what I'm also planning to do is to add in all of the other DOE labs data into this. Once we can do that, we could really have a robust workforce readiness plan that we can share with trainers across all of the country. I'd like to, once I get the funding, I'm working on some proposals right now to get funding to do this. I want to create a website that interfaces across all of the organizations I've talked about, the national labs, industry, utility sector, all the trainers, from all different levels, technical, community colleges, universities, et cetera, so that they can all talk to each other. The trainers can get the information on the skills needed. The employers can hire directly, and the people looking for the training can find where to go to get the training and what employers are looking to hire. So I think it all fits together. It's going to take a little bit of time, but we're really working hard to make this happen. And I think it'll be very impactful, really across the whole country, not just our region that this initiative focuses on. So that's just, some of the different accomplishments that we've had. Obviously, I have a lot more that we have a big plan for. But in conclusion here, if you go to the next slide, our regional workforce initiative relies on being consistent, communicating with our region, and collaborating with our stakeholders. We have substantive engagement from our webinars, from our monthly e-note, from our different groups, our Regional Advanced Manufacturing and Energy Innovation Group, our Workforce Readiness Plan, and our Advanced Welding Workforce Initiative, which is our Training 1.0. So super proud of where we've started, where we've come, and where we're going. And if anybody has any questions for me, I'd be happy to take them. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Anthony. That was very informative. I can tell you could probably give an entire webinar yourself on these topics. There's obviously a lot going on in this space. I did want to encourage attendees to use the question and answers dialog box. You're welcome to do so during presentations. Our panelists will try to view those as this moves forward. And if no one has anything specific for Anthony, knowing he has a short timeline today, we did have some questions presented to us prior to the start of the webinar today. So I'll start with those unless I see a question come up in the dialog box. The first one, and we'll probably revisit this question later with some other experts in our panelists, but the first question, what are you doing to encourage women and other non-traditional populations into a workforce pipeline? I know you touched on that a little bit with your examples, but could you elaborate on that, please?
Well, I think what made our advanced welding training opportunity so successful from the perspective of bringing in diverse people, women more than ever. I think 3 of the 5, we had more women enrolled than ever in any of the trades combined. I think it takes a good marketing and branding of what it is you're trying to do. What are the opportunities that are out there? What does the pay structure look like? What kind of benefits are there? What are the long-term projections or outlook of either the training or the occupation that you're trying to create a pipeline in? And I think the more aware you can make anybody, whether it's women, whether it's just anybody in general, people coming out of high school, people of color, I think it comes down to, are they aware of the opportunity that's out there? And that's what we focused on for this training. Is we really hit home on those areas looking for hope, they're looking for help, all over the Appalachian region. And I think we did a good job of that because it shows in who's enrolled. So I would just say, yeah, to answer that question, that's what it takes. You have to do a really good job of making people aware of the opportunity that's out there.
Right. Thank you. And we will revisit that question later as we talk about tribal communities and the 2 core CM projects and such. There is a question in the dialogue box from Patrick. Have you discovered any major do's and especially don'ts which relate to the writing and monitoring of a workforce development plan?
Yeah, good question, Patrick. So from our first pilot program, we felt that one of the questions maybe wasn't written well because we didn't get very good responses. And so for us, for it to be successful, we want to get as much data and as much transparency as possible on these technologies. So if the questions aren't written well or easily made to understand or why they're important, you won't get the data that you're looking for. And so we went back and we threw out one of the questions, we revised it to make it maybe more understandable, maybe simplify it a little bit. So I think my recommendation would be, if you were to go develop workforce readiness plans for your organization, simplify, simplify, simplify. Make them easy to understand, but also explain to them why it is that you want this data, why it's important, what are the impacts this data can have, so that they take it serious, so that they give you really good, again, transparent information. So what I did was I went to all of the technology managers at our lab and I gave them individualized presentations on workforce readiness and what our vision was for it, so that they truly understood what it was. And then after the first year, I went and gave them summary of results and showed them, hey, these are the answers that we received. By the way, this one question clearly wasn't very well done because we didn't get good responses. They gave me feedback about that. Hey, why don't you revise the question and make it maybe more understandable, relatable, etc.
All right, thank you. Does anyone else have a question, or we can go to one of the pre-submitted questions? We'll probably revisit this one as well later, but I find it very relevant, especially with you, Anthony, presenting on some of the skills development and the workforce, your workforce work plan tool and how to scope some of those skills developments. So this one is, there has been a lot of attention on the fact that current outsourcing of rare earth element processing is due in a large part to cheap, unsafe, and unregulated processing practices in China and Russia. So under Core CM, we're obviously looking at rare earth elements and critical minerals processing. In creating a domestic supply chain, what is being done on the regulatory side for worker safety and the mitigation of potential hazards and risks of rare earth element processing operations? And I would extend that beyond rare earth elements, but just the consider of mitigation of hazards and workforce safety considerations.
Yeah, I mean, we take, obviously the U.S. government takes safety and the cleanliness of this type of trade, if you will, very seriously. We have a few different collaborations with various universities across Appalachia where we're demonstrating the extraction of rare earth elements. So just in the practice of that demonstration, we have various safety measures that we have to demonstrate. The cleanliness of the extraction of the rare earth elements is another thing that they focuses on. I'm not sure if I have specific examples for you, but I just know that during these day-to-day, demonstrations that we do with these partners of ours, those are areas of emphasis. I can tell you that.
All right, thank you. Well, I think that's what we have for questions for you today, Anthony. I wanted to thank you for your time. I know you're limited today. We appreciate your participation. And if additional questions come up from attendees or other panelists, I'll be sure to forward those to you. And again, thank you for being with us today. In an interest of time,
thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Yeah. In interest of time, I'll move us on to Stephanie Salazar. She's providing some insights on the community perspective, and may also have some things to say about rare earth elements, as she's familiar with that in her region. So thank you, Stephanie.
You bet. Thank you, Gavin. That was a fantastic presentation by Anthony, and I'm probably going to have some more questions for him as a resource. Yes, my name is Stephanie Salazar. I'm the Executive Director of the Upton Economic Development Board in Upton, Wyoming. I've been an economic developer since about 2003 with actually substantial private sector experience prior to that. And my experience has been in the Denver metro area in Colorado, as well as rural Colorado. So that sort of informs me of some a variety of actions and programs that are in more of a densely populated area that I can help bring to rural communities. I've been working with the town, actually Upton Economic Development Board since December of 2018. The board is made up of 9 members who are business owners and stakeholders in the Upton area. And they typically, these members have been very involved in the community for a number of years. They decided to hire me in 2018 because they wanted to have a more robust economic development and workforce development program. And so one of the first things I was tasked with was to actually do a strategic plan with them to determine how we were going to move forward. So why don't we go ahead and get started with the next slide. Let's see, I'm going to have to move that so I can see it myself. Upton is a very rural community, as you can see, 1,100 people, and the community members pride themselves on being the smallest town in the smallest county in the smallest populated state in the country. And I haven't verified that, but it's definitely very rural. And it's basically at your typical Wyoming industries with transportation and logistics, with a rail-served business park, energy, mining, manufacturing, ranching, and soon to come, rare earth elements, thanks to Rare Element Resources, which is developing its demonstration plant at the Tiger Transfer Logistics Center. Upton is kind of interestingly situated. It's, from my point of view, if you look at a Google map, it's central, it's in the center of Northeast Wyoming, embedded in the Wyoming Black Hills area, and it has amazing access to Interstate 90 and US Highway 85, which is also known as the Heartland Express from Canada to Mexico, in addition to being located right at the vortex of Scenic Byway US 16 on your way into Custer State Park and Highway 116 north and south. Next slide, please. So Upton faces the challenge of a growing workforce, growing a skilled workforce, just as pretty much every other community in the country. And as many rural communities can attest to, there are additional challenges having a small population. There are fewer employers offering well-paying jobs with benefits. The commutes are definitely longer. Access to education and training can be challenging at times. Many rural communities lack adequate lodging and housing. Affordable daycare is not just a rural issue, but it definitely gets to be challenging when you're trying to staff a daycare in a rural community. Healthcare, when I first came to Upton, was practically non-existent. Unfortunately, that has improved over time, and we have a very well-staffed clinic that's open 4 days a week, full-time. The lifestyle amenities, if you're coming from an urban area, you're lacking shopping, of course, and recreation, and maybe some other amenities that you would find in a more densely populated area. Although they're in a rural area, there are outdoor recreation opportunities that you don't get in an urban area. And of course, being a coal community, the industry sector volatility, it affects workforce as well. Next slide, please. So here are some questions that we sort of used to, that basically when we start the strategic planning process, these are questions that come up and that we need to answer when we're developing our strategic plan. Who are the workers? What do they need? That's huge. If we don't know where the workers are coming from, or what it is that's going to attract them and retain them, those are issues that we're all challenged with across the country. We, as a community, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. So when we looked at what resources and assets are needed in Upton to attract and retain workforce, we are looking in the context of a region, what the region offers. Employers and workers typically don't really look at the municipal boundaries when they're looking for the resources and assets that they desire. We also want to talk about or consider how we're going to promote our resources, how we're going to promote ourselves to attract the workers and retain them. What are the partnerships that are key to creating and delivering education and training? And I really enjoyed Anthony's presentation regarding talking about how partnerships are really essential and growing, increasing your number of partnerships and collaboration. I think that's essential to what it is we're all trying to accomplish here. And then communication is really important to promote industry activities so that workers are aware of what it is you've got going in your area. And then we want to communicate that to workers who have transferable skills, those who are in school, and the unemployed. I'd say transferable skills are huge, and analyzing what the transferable skills are of the workers in the area is important to know what the availability is of transferring those skills to up and coming industries like Core CM. Next slide, please. So when we analyze our population, we look at the commuting patterns, and currently from Rapid City, South Dakota to Gillette, we've got commuting going in both directions as well as north and south. So when we take that analysis, I took the census data from 2020 at the time because we really didn't have good numbers when I put this together about a year ago. And our workforce population would be about 244,000. That's definitely increased since then, and that a lot of that has to do with the B-21 bomber that is coming to Rapid City, South Dakota. There are about 5,000 military personnel who are going to be moving into the area. You can just see that the housing development that's going on in the Rapid City area is just gone bonkers, and they're still going to be short as far as housing. And those 5,000 personnel are going to bring their families with them. So what that does is actually opens up the door to another pool of potential workers. Typically, military pay is not that high, and many military families have a second worker in the family, and that could be an opportunity for attracting workers to the Northeast Wyoming area to support some of the growing industry here. Next slide, please. So if we look at who the workers are, we can obviously students, college, even K through 12, you're grooming your future workforce in the classrooms, hopefully. And I see that the colleges in Wyoming, in particular, the universities and colleges are definitely positioning their programming toward graduates attaining jobs once they graduate. That senior citizens are overlooked many times. There are a lot of seniors out there who are retired who would love to be involved in some of the new industries and technology and have a wealth of knowledge. Veterans are also potential workers. Honor camps. There are several employers in Upton who actually employ people who are living at honor camps just north of Newcastle. Retired military people, they usually retire early and start second careers. At-home parents who may not be working, maybe they could work remotely. Home-based workers, remote workers, part-time workers, and out-of-state people moving from out of state looking for a better quality of life. Next slide, please. So I bring to your attention the Tiger Transfer Upton Logistics Center because it is our primary employment center. And they actually, for their business, for doing transload, they have about maybe just under a dozen workers, but the jobs pay well and they're benefited. And we hope that this center is going to attract more employment in the future. Next slide, please. And this is just sort of a location map. As you can see, the rail, and just on the northeast of the rail is US 16, Highway US 16. And north of that is property owned by the Upton Economic Development Board. Next slide, please. Transportation is important, not just to business, but to workers for commuting, and so for access to work and basically transacting your life for living and accessing recreation. And we already kind of discussed as far as the access points, the interstates and highways. So next slide, please. It may surprise people, but Upton, a town of 1,100 people, has an FAA-approved general aviation airport. And the town was able to obtain a grant from WYDOT Aeronautics Division, and they completed a master plan, or they're in the process of completing a master plan to upgrade the airport. And when I bring this up to your attention, because there are a lot of individuals who use the airport for recreation, for fly-ins and things like that. And we have people who actually are looking to live near Upton and access the airport and bring their businesses into town. Next slide, please. Daycare, as we mentioned earlier, is an issue, and Upton's been pretty proactive, and so is Weston County. Weston County Children's Center has a location in Upton, and it's subsidized by the state of Wyoming as well as the Upton Economic Development Board. We provide scholarships to families who can't afford to send their children to preschool. And then we have recently developed a private daycare facility, which from the day it opened in January of 2020 has a waiting list. In fact, both centers have a waiting list right now, but this is essential for workers who do have children. You have to have somewhere to where they're safe and they're cared for. Next slide, please. So part of our strategic planning process was to move forward with some plans and studies. So we did the strategic plan when I first came on board and completed that in early 2019. It actually needs to be revised at the end of 2022. And then we had a hotel feasibility study done, because what came out of the strategic plan is we don't have anywhere for businesses or visitors to land in Upton for a temporary stay. So we completed that hotel feasibility study and then negotiated with Cobblestone Inn and Suites to bring a hotel into town, which it's a little challenging right now due to inflation and supply chain issues, but we're still moving forward. And then we had a couple of USDA rural development funded feasibility studies done. The first one was funded in 2020. 2 reports came out of that, and they were heavily focused on small business and workforce development. So those were very informative, and we're using that data to try to pursue programs and plans to attract and retain more workers. The 2021 funded study was focused on our downtown area for housing and workforce development. They kind of go hand in hand. If you don't have any place for the workers to live, makes it a little difficult to attract them. Next slide, please. So the 2021 or excuse me, 2020 plan here. These are just some visuals that came out of the study for potential conceptual design of housing. And since then, the UEDB, Upton Economic Development Board, has formed a housing task force, and we have been developing a plan for implementation to develop housing in town. And hopefully we will see that start to come to fruition in 2023. Next slide, please. And this is just the first plan, part of the first study. This is the property on the north here that I talked about that's owned by the Upton Economic Development Board, just adjacent to Tiger Transfer Business Park. And the importance of this is that the workforce housing area would be toward the south end of this project, in between a hotel and a business park area. You can see section G is where some apartments would go, and then townhomes to the north and single family starter homes and so forth. And so we at least have a plan, and it gives us the ability to promote to investor developers. And we've been having some conversations to try to bring in some development for housing. Next slide, please. So education is huge, education and training, and our school district has a lot of, basically it's sort of the center of the community, period, as far as activity level, but it has a fantastic programming from K through 12. And as you can see here, the learning model is personalized. There are career and technical education tracks, college accredited courses. They've had that from freshman through senior year for a number of years at Weston County School District number 7. And the proof is in the pudding here. We've got some amazing graduates who are accepted to the University of Notre Dame and United States Military, if I could talk here, excuse me, Military Academy at West Point. And so we really, we collaborate quite a bit with Weston County School District as far as trying to help prepare high school students for their next stage of learning and professional development. Next slide, please. And then we have access to several universities. And again, we don't look at boundaries, municipal or state boundaries. So we're very proud of University of Wyoming, very proactive, leading edge university, and having the Small Business Development Center embedded in the University of Wyoming is a real plus as well for a business attraction point of view or business development. Gillette College is just got a really robust program, apparently collaborating with the private sector on developing programming to serve a variety of industry sectors in Northeast Wyoming. And Eastern Wyoming College has a pretty strong partnership with our K through 12 school system. And then you've got the School of Mines in South Dakota, which it actually collaborates with the Colorado School of Mines quite a bit. And if you hadn't heard of it, there's the Sanford Underground Research Facility in Lead, South Dakota. They are studying neutrinos there, but beyond that, they have about probably over 120 universities and institutions across the country doing research in the lab, like Brown University, Harvard, Berkeley, you name it. If it's a higher education institution in the United States, they may be doing research in that lab. And then there's the Black Hills State University in Spearfish. Beyond that, we've got the technical colleges here, which we find that Mitchell Technical College is well attended from high school grads in Northeast Wyoming, as well as WyoTech and Western Dakota Technical College. Next slide, please. So healthcare is huge, especially for your older or maturing workers. But your younger ones tend to be more active. So having healthcare in the area is going to be important, and especially if you're attracting families with young children. Next slide, please. So from our point of view, the Upton Economic Development Board collaboration with commitment and dedication to the community, attracting expertise and knowledge through those collaborations, and with innovative approaches to challenges is tremendously important to maintain, stay on track to pursue the goal of developing and attracting workforce to our area. And we kind of use some of these visuals as inspiration. We look at workforce training as a team sport. It takes a large group of people working together to accomplish the goal. Next slide, please. So we've talked, Anthony talked a lot about collaborations, and we've, in the past year or so, we've worked quite a bit with Department of Workforce Services. We've been utilizing their training grants and bringing those to our businesses. The Wyoming Community Foundation has scholarships that we've been tapping into for higher education and technical training for students of all ages. And then, of course, the Upton Economic Development Board offers scholarships and grants as well to support not just education, but also community development. Next slide, please. So the Upton Economic Development Board partnered with the Upton Chamber of Commerce and Department of Workforce Services. And in February of this year, we held a workshop where Workforce Services presented all of their training grants and at a luncheon. And for a town of 1,100 people, to have 50 people attending a workshop during the day at lunch was pretty amazing, actually. And so we're pretty proud of that. Afterwards, we had a dozen employers who contacted the UEDB, or the Upton Economic Development Board, for assistance in completing some of the training grant applications. And we continue to have inquiries, and we've been providing assistance to a few more applicants. So that's been a tremendously beneficial partnership. It's enabled employers to have some funding to actually train employees on the job. Next slide, please. So from my point of view, from not just working in Wyoming, but also collaborating on some workforce development boards and in Colorado, the key partnership to develop and make sure it is robust is between C-level business industry leaders who are decision makers and senior administrators for education institutions. The reason being is that has to be a very tight partnership and collaborative, where the educational institutions are being informed by the industry leaders of what the needs are for workforce development and training. And a lot of times your private sector is going to bring some innovation to the table, to the educational institutions, and the institutions are going to inform the business leaders as far as what it's going to take to pivot and provide training that's going to be effective for the workers. The example of this kind of collaboration, one of the examples would be Vestas, the wind farm company developing all those wind farms. And so they were looking to move into a plant that was vacated by Carrier Air Conditioning. And Carrier Air Conditioning had laid off about 2,500 employees and closed their doors. And Vestas was looking at the plant, and they said, gee, we like the plant, but where are the workers coming from? And the governor at the time of Colorado brought together about a half a dozen CEOs from a variety of industries, and they put together a plan and put out buses at different locations at Walmarts and Kmart's and very large retail areas. And the buses had the equipment, tons of training equipment on them. And in a 6-week actually I take this back, about 3-week program, these workers who had been laid off would come to these stores and they go through these buses for training. And when Vestas was ready to open their plant, they had 1,500 retrained workers. So this is where, when you're looking at transferable skills, that's what enabled this whole thing to happen. Is the carrier air conditioner workers had the skill set that could be transferred to work at a Vestas plant. And so I think that was a very successful example of a collaboration between the educational institutions who provided the training on those buses and the C-level industry leaders who actually put together remote training facilities in parking lots, which I thought was kind of clever. Another partnership was between, that I'd like to highlight, it's not on my slide here, would be Suncor refinery north of Denver. And in 2005, they were anticipating attrition of about 40% of their workers due to retirement. So before that occurred, they contacted Red Rocks Community College in Golden and sort of basically helped negotiate with them and with the Colorado School of Mines for the STEM program at Red Rocks. If a student passed that program, they would automatically be enrolled in the Colorado School of Mines. And the Colorado School of Mines agreed to that. And then Suncor, they offered full ride scholarships to anyone they hired who passed the 2-year program and then went to School of Mines and started those students at pretty high wages. And so it was a win-win. The young people coming out of college not only got their education paid for, but they had a job that they were being trained on as well. Next slide, please. So workers aren't just looking for work, they're looking for fun. So this is kind of a fun slide for me. The Upton area, actually Upton has a Indian Cara Enduro, which is a motocross ride. And this year in September, they had their 28th competition, and riders from all over the Rocky Mountain area, actually throughout the nation, come to this event in Upton. And so it's one of those outdoor activities that people come out to Upton to enjoy. Next slide, please. So that's basically, we try to pull together a variety of resources and assets that will attract the kind of people who would like to live in a rural community and enjoy outdoors, but also year-round entertainment and outdoor activities, and access education and training and opportunities for a good career in Northeast Wyoming.
All right, thank you so much, Stephanie. I think we can all appreciate the community perspective you provided, and especially emphasis on that community support structure. So thank you for that. There are a few questions in the dialogue box, which you're welcome to answer, as well as other panelists while our next presenters speak, but we'll move on to the state perspective from our experts at the Wyoming Department of Workforce Services. Any questions not answered in the dialogue box we'll save for the end. So thank you very much. And thank you to Wyoming Department of Workforce Services for your time today.
Thank you so much for inviting us to be a part of this really exciting webinar and discussion. I will introduce myself. I'm here with a couple of members of my team. My name is Shay Moon, and I am the program manager for the Business Training and Support Unit under the Wyoming Department of Workforce Services. So one of the main programs that we have here under this unit is what we call the Workforce Development Training Fund. So we'll share a little bit more information with you about how that started and what that looks like, as well as going into some of our grant information and also talking about how we're engaging youth, engaging various individuals and businesses to participate in some of these grants. And go ahead and we can move the slide. Thank you. So the Workforce Development Training Fund is a very unique program. I have been with this particular unit here and worked with this program for about the last year and a half. And what I've realized since I've come here is how unique this program is to Wyoming. We get a lot of questions about how this program is funded, how it came to be, because it's a program that we're able to really use that funding to adapt and pivot to workforce needs, create grants and economic development opportunities to meet the needs of industry and the workforce. And so it is very unique in the sense that we have a lot of flexibility in how this grant or this training fund is used. And so that's what makes it, I think, so unique and just so great as a resource for our Wyoming businesses and our citizens. This program was actually established as far back as 1997 through legislative statute. And since then, I have seen several revisions of that, but it has been around a long time. I'm not able to kind of speak to how that program came about when it was first developed or those conversations, but it is been under the Department of Workforce Services, and we have had grants, for many years. The businesses, Wyoming businesses, have accessed, and I think that has just grown over time. But it's unique in the sense that it's comprised of both state general funds and also interest from our unemployment insurance trust fund. So we actually get a total appropriation per biennium every 2 years of about $4 million that goes into this training fund. And in terms of the parameters that we use to look at what kind of grants we're developing, right now we have 5 grants under the fund, and I anticipate that we will continue over time to develop more grants. We actually are working on a new grant right now. But what we have to ensure when doing that is that any funding that's used is going towards workforce development programs to either train, retrain, or upgrade work skills for existing Wyoming workers. And that's really what the statute calls out. But it's broad enough that we are able to, of course, with the approval of our agency director and the Wyoming governor's office, we're able to develop grants that are going to meet the needs of industry as industry continues to grow and change, and the needs of, and really help us meet some of the needs of businesses and things that we're hearing out in the community when we're working with these businesses day in and day out. So the grants can be accessed by Wyoming-based businesses and training providers. And for one of our grants in particular, this is in collaboration with economic development entities. So it's a very exciting program. It's a very unique fund. I am personally not aware of other states that have a fund like this, but certainly, it would give others kind of a good idea of here's what Wyoming does in terms of their training fund, and the programs are able to create based on this training fund and the rules, and maybe it's something that other states could potentially model. So I'll go ahead and let Sharon here introduce herself, and she's going to dive in and give a little bit more detail about each of the training grants that we currently have.
Thank you, Shay. Yes, my name is Sharon Geisler, and I am the program lead for Workforce Development Training Fund. If you would go ahead and go to the next slide. So these are the 5 grants that Shay mentioned for this opportunity, and they have different purposes and different accessibility to the Wyoming businesses and those that are involved. It really is geared towards helping upskill and train our workforce to keep the businesses competitive, to keep the individuals current, and be able to help the businesses if they are looking for employees as well. So I'll do a quick overview of the different grants, and then share it with Ivy, and she can talk about apprenticeships a little bit more. The first grant that was set up under this program is the Business Training Grant, and that was developed to help the Wyoming businesses that are already established here, like I said, to stay current and to keep their workforce trained and upskilled so that they can continue moving forward with their businesses. This is a grant that they can apply for training opportunities that would be a direct correlation to the trainee and what they're doing within the business. And it can pay for their tuition costs, their registration cost, if there's class materials, supplies, and sometimes if there are license or certification fees that are involved with the training, we can help with that. And so all of our grants are reimbursement models where the business would have the initial outlay of the expenses. And then after the components of the grant have been met, then they would fill in a final report summary and then supply all their expenses and receipts and everything. And then we would be able to reimburse them for what was approved in that grant. We've had businesses take advantage of this for one-day training, where an employee does online training for a period of time. And then there's some where people have done training for several days, up to months, up to a year. So it's been very beneficial and pretty flexible for the business to determine the training that they're wanting their employees to participate in. This is also open to the owners of the business. And so they're also considered an employee of that business and would be able to take advantage of this. This is a grant that we have just been able to recently adjust the rules to allow for a greater amount that we're able to reimburse. We have some preferred industries here in Wyoming that have been set by the Wyoming Development Council, Workforce Development Council. And those businesses that fall within those preferred industries are eligible for up to $5,000 per employee for their training in a fiscal year. If they're not in a preferred industry, they're eligible for up to $4,000 in a fiscal year. So it's been very helpful for those businesses to, even while they're putting that expense out, they're able to get it reimbursed back to them, and then they can utilize their funds to other purposes for the business. Overall, the businesses, when they are applying for these grants for their trainees, they're able to apply for up to $200,000 to cover those employees' training that they want to have reimbursed. There is a pre-hire grant, and this was set up to help businesses when they're not able to find the skill set out in the community to hire employees into their business. So what they do is they can collaborate with a training provider that can train up that skill set. They're also collaborating with the local workforce center to help them identify potential trainees and potential workers, but also help collaborate that there is a shortage of that skill set. And they're also working with the economic development entity in their area. And they all come together for this grant to apply for training opportunities to get potential employees trained up. So as soon as they come out of that training, they can be hired and be put to work in the businesses that have that need. So we do have the pre-hire economic development grant that's available. We don't actually have a cap on that grant. It really is just based on the training that they're requesting and what the average cost of that training would look like, and the training provider that's providing that training, what their expenses are. It can also cover things like tuition and registration, class materials and supplies. Some circumstances, it can cover the instructor wages. and if there's travel involved for either the trainees or for the instructor. So there's a variety of things that these grants can help reimburse back to the business. In correlation with the business training grant and the pre-hire, we've developed a pre-obligation grant that is available to the economic development entities while they are working with businesses to either relocate here to Wyoming and need to build up a workforce, or if they're expanding here in Wyoming. And so it's a co-application by the business that they're working with and the economic development entity to have a high estimate of what those training expenses would look like for that expansion or that relocation. And then they apply to have that funding obligated and set aside so that it won't be used for anything else. And then once they're ready to utilize that funding and send their people to training, they would access that through the business training grant or through the pre-hire grant to get the skill set and the workforce that they need. We have an apprenticeship grant that is available to registered apprenticeship programs, and they are registered with the Department of Labor. And our next, my coworker Ivy will go into that a little bit more detail. But once a business or an apprenticeship program has been established, there are components to that apprenticeship program, and one of those components is classroom theoretical related instruction training where there's a cost involved. Typically that covers tuition or registration. It can cover the instructor wages if it's on-site training by the instructor, and some other materials and fees. And so we're able to help the business who is hosting that apprenticeship program with the expenses on that side of things. And then our last grant currently is an internship grant. It is available again to Wyoming businesses that are wanting to host an internship opportunity, basically a short-term work experience for individuals that are wanting to learn more about that business, that industry, get some work experience. I know we typically think of an internship as something that a student would be doing, whether they're a college student or a high school student. And while they are preferred, especially for certain skill sets, and they get preference points in the scoring of their rubric, they don't have to hire a student to bring an intern on. It really is opening that opportunity up for individuals that may want to do a career shift, or maybe they're unemployed and they just want to have that work experience. And so it helps the business from providing that opportunity, and then we can help reimburse for the wages of bringing that intern on so that it helps the business and the intern. We do cap the internship grant up to 1,040 hours. And so sometimes if they're working full-time, that can be up to 6 months. If they're working part-time, you can do it for up to a year. The 1,040 hours, you don't have to utilize all of that. You can do it for a short-term summer internship. It's totally up to the business of what type of internship they want to host. And then we're able to reimburse those wages up to $25 an hour. But the business does have to justify what the wage is that they are wanting to pay that intern, and that it correlates to the average industry wages of that industry. And so we're able to support that we can reimburse up to a certain amount. If the business wants to pay more than that, they certainly are able to, but it just gives them a little bit more flexibility in what they're able to pay those interns to make it worth their time to host that internship. So that's a very high level information about our grant program. I will go ahead and include in our chat our website. I think we'll have it down a little bit further below, but I'll also include it in the chat just so that you have an opportunity to review our website and look through the different grants. We have the applications attached there. We have the rules attached to our website. And for some of these grants, there's forms and documents that go along with them. And so we have that information on our website as well.
And I will also just mention, if I could add here as well, that one of the we're really focused on all industries, and certainly some of the preferred industries, but we are looking at the energy sector, of course, critical minerals. So that is an area that we want to continue to work with businesses and industry and grow. So that is one area we are looking at and wanting to build those partnerships as well.
So, and I think I misspoke. I'm not sure that I'm able to put our website in the chat. And so I'm hoping that that's included in our next slide. I'll hand it over to Ivy.
Thanks, Sharon. Hi, everyone. My name is Ivy Moore, and I am the State Apprenticeship Program Lead for the Department of Workforce Services. We can go ahead and move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. So really, I wanted to expand on our efforts with apprenticeship programs, engaging Wyoming's youth, and developing our employment pipeline, utilizing registered apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship. So really our efforts over the last few years have really been focused on expanding apprenticeship into non-traditional occupations and industries. That does include mining in the energy sector. We've really focused on expanding our employment pipeline into the youth that we have here in Wyoming. We've really been looking at how we can apply apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship in partnering and collaborating with our career and technical education across the state. We've been building partnerships with teachers, career counselors, and our high school seniors over the last few years. Really, we're just trying to expand the education of apprenticeship and looking at how we can develop pre-apprenticeship standards in those career and technical education courses they're already taking to complete their requirements for graduation. We have been working with a few schools across Wyoming to develop apprenticeship opportunities and pipelines for the seniors post-graduation. We see the need for those seniors who do not plan on attending community college or university post-graduation, giving them the opportunity to enter the workforce with training options, really to develop, a great future for them, and then also for our economic standing for Wyoming. We have been engaging these youth using quite a plethora of options. We've been creating QR codes for students to hang up across the school, be able to scan. Those QR codes are taking them directly to a resource that we use on pretty much a daily basis. It's apprenticeship.gov. This database allows students to access current apprenticeship programs across the state of Wyoming, explore different occupations and industries that already have developed programs that are approved by the Department of Labor, and then they can actually apply for those apprenticeship opportunities directly through that platform. We've also been engaging with youth through career fairs. We do attend many career fairs, whether that's in person or virtually across the state, just to educate students on the opportunities of apprenticeship. We also have vendor booths at different teacher conferences, CTE conferences. We have a good working relationship with the Wyoming Department of Education, so we attend a lot of those events. And then we've also actually partnered with teachers across the state to give in-class information sessions to students. It can be applied to career exploration that they're doing in their class studies, and then it can also be for seniors to educate them on post-graduation opportunities. Just adding into this, us engaging with the youth and developing this employment pipeline, we do have a few other partnerships that I think could be a great resource for the individuals participating in this call. We do have a good working relationship with Wyoming Manufacturing Works. They're almost an intermediary or a community partner, workforce partner. They're able to actually help manufacturing companies with the resources that they need to grow, expand, and come to Wyoming. So that's a great resource. And then we also partner with almost all of our community colleges. And I know we have a great representative on the call today to talk about the community college perspective. But Laramie County Community College is actually developing a state-of-the-art manufacturing facility. That facility will actually be opening February 3rd. It is currently under construction, but they will be offering manufacturing courses both in person and virtually. And I think the program that they're most excited about is their 8-week program for their Manufacturing 1 certificates. I bring this up because that educational opportunity could be a great resource in developing a registered apprenticeship program. There are a few main components of an apprenticeship program that include hands-on training, but then also that supplemental education or the related technical instruction that Sharon had mentioned. And that part of the apprenticeship program is something that we can support with our apprenticeship grant. And I'll hand it back over to Shay for any closing thoughts.
Thank you, Ivy, and thank you, Sharon. That was great. So we actually, I believe, left off our contact slide, but I did go ahead and send that to Christine. So she is going to include our information, just title and how to reach us when she sends those slides out. I also went ahead and just put our general email for the program in the chat section, along with my email. If you wanted to contact myself directly, Ivy and Sharon can put their information in the chat as well. We kind of say that, you know, anybody who wants to reach out, I mean, you can reach out to all of us, you can reach out to one of us. We work very closely together on a daily basis and are right here in the same office out of Cheyenne. So, you know, feel free, we will get you to the right person to answer your question if you ever want to reach out to any of us.
All right, thank you so much, Shay, Sharon, and Ivy. That was extremely informative. I, for one, will be reaching out to you. I learned a great deal from this and see significant parallels in our strategic planning around the CORSIUM initiative. So thank you again. We'll pass the microphone off to Amy at the Western Wyoming Community College.
Thanks, Anthony. Good morning, everyone. I am Amy Murphy. I'm the Dean of Outreach and Workforce Development, and I appreciate taking some time this morning to share with you kind of a community college perspective on workforce training. If you don't mind, Christine, go to the next slide. Workforce training kind of falls within, obviously, the workforce development aspect of it. And I want to kind of share some of the objectives within workforce development. And those you kind of see listed here just to kind of scan through some of them, which I'm very honored to see. Like a lot of the presenters have already shared a lot of these different perspectives as far as building the talent pipeline, removing barriers to employment, kind of expanding that labor force. But it's also supporting job retention and career advancement, which is the incumbent worker part to that. Sharon and Shay and Ivy kind of talked about some different opportunities there for incumbent workers, preparing workforce for the necessary skills. And the necessary skills aren't necessarily always technical skills. A lot of them are soft skills or essential skills, life skills. And it's also kind of forecasting what you see as future labor force needs, connecting employers with those potential workers, customized and traditional type training. All of this is done through a customer service approach. And the reason I share that aspect of it is because a lot of times training isn't always the solution to what we're looking for. But in the case of what we're talking about today, we are going to focus on workforce training and the key element of partnerships. I can't stress partnerships enough. I have over 30 years working in higher education and working with business and industry, as well as the different social service agencies out there where it's kind of connecting all the pieces together. Next slide, please. A key element here is human capital. Okay, it's obviously the thing we're talking about, and it's where, you know, you look at kind of a definition here where we talk about developing, keeping, attracting, and maximizing the potential out of people. That's from when they're born all the way up to, as Stephanie kind of mentioned, even senior citizens sometimes are overlooked as far as like looking at different sources for the labor market. And this is the true community difference maker for economic development is maximizing your human capital within your community, maximizing what their talents and skills are and kind of placing them in the appropriate level positions. Go ahead, next slide, please. Can you go back one there? Thanks, Christine. Okay, so just a challenge that's out there, and this has been a challenge that everyone has kind of mentioned so far, But it's a challenge and a concern when you look at the different workforce and the quality and the quantity of it. COVID has played a huge impact, as all of you have known. You see it now everywhere that there's a help wanted ad pretty much on every business that you go by. Where did everybody go, right? That's the question we ask. But that labor pipeline is changing. You've got the baby boomers who have postponed retiring for quite a while, but now with COVID, you're seeing actually a lot of the baby boomers leaving, and you are being forced to kind of look at that aspect of it, and you're looking at all that skill and knowledge leaving the door. The other piece is you got the new effect on the millennial generation. This generation kind of has a different kind of work ethic and kind of a different style of how they would like to work. And one of the trends that you're seeing within the millennial generation is they kind of like that flex schedule or being able to be the remote worker. So those types of things need to be taken into consideration when you're looking at that labor pipeline. Another challenge that's out there is a lot of mismatch in worker training. So if you kind of like see what I listed there, about 60% of the new jobs created will actually require skills that only 20% of the workforce have. As technology changes, the skills level change, and you're constantly trying to stay ahead of the curve, which is really next to impossible. But when you're looking at the 60% of the new jobs that are created, and we're saying will require skills that only 20% of the current workforce possess, there's a training issue there and a training need. You also have that flow of the labor pipeline. So as you look at birth rates and you're looking at the different things that have an impact there, you have the flow of the labor pipeline that you have to kind of monitor and watch, as well as that decrease in birth rates. Go ahead, Christine. When you look at the existing and future workforce, as you can kind of see here, counseling and coaching is really needed. From just getting back from some high school recruiting visits that I went to, a lot of the students nowadays, or the younger adults, really don't know what they want to do. They don't have a clue. They might want to follow in their parents' footsteps, but they're not really sure. So career assessments are really kind of a key element as far as working that out and partnering earlier on in the K-12 school to educate them on what the career opportunities are. You've got what I mentioned above, where kids are following kind of in their parents' footsteps. That's huge. And especially here in Wyoming, you see a lot of the students who look at some of their parents who are actually in some of these really well-paying jobs in the trona mines, and they want to do similar things to that nature. So they follow in like what the parent wants to do. And you got the many young people lack those hard and soft and life skills. Not sure where that disconnect came from, but we are noticing that a lot of times the soft skills aren't there, those essential skills, and just kind of the time elements, being able to respond to conflict. How do you handle things, showing up to work on time, understanding sometimes you have to put that cell phone down and focus on the job. You can't take off because you want to go see, a baseball game or a football game if you're scheduled to work. And the other piece that's there is the financial funding for individuals to upgrade skills or train for the in-demand skills. That financial funding is sometimes lacking. They may not qualify for some of the grant opportunities that Shay and her team kind of mentioned, or they don't qualify for financial aid because they're just above that mark. But there is different aspects that we can kind of help through as far as finding them some financial funding to support that training initiative. Christine, go ahead and advance. When you look at the individual, there's also challenges that are there. Sometimes as you look at kind of some of the things that are going on, you got the environment. Stephanie had mentioned about kind of the rural area, and sometimes in rural areas, you don't have the opportunities that some places, when you live in this big city of, Salt Lake City or Denver or Chicago, that students or individuals may have the opportunities to. But there's other challenges that are out there. You also have the individuals who have disabilities who really do want to participate in the workforce, and it's to find the match between an employer and that person and finding those opportunities that we can place them. You also have the underemployed or unemployed due to business closures. You've got people who are actually exiting out of the prison system and looking to re-enter into the society with a meaningful job. You, as I mentioned before, the geographic and mobility challenges, the cultural barriers, and you've got those that are the workforce age who maybe not have been in the workforce for a while, might be a homemaker, could be a single dad who stayed home to raise the kids, and now they're looking to get back into the workforce. Go ahead there, Christine. So what does this mean? it really kind of comes down to a mismatch between jobs and workers and trying to get those people to match the jobs that are available by getting them the appropriate training. And then you have communities without a talented workforce if you don't address this issue. Next slide, please. The approach that the community college takes, and as I mentioned, I've been in it for 30 years, and it's been the approach that I've taken throughout my entire career, is you can offer workforce training, but you can't offer it unless you actually kind of approach it in a sector strategy approach, a partnership thing. So what I mean by this, and you can kind of see by the graphic there, it talks about you have to have industry at the table. Industry drives the workforce training. It's not education telling industry what they need. It's industry telling us what they need. But we can't do it alone as a community college. There's a lot of different partners that you have to have at the table. And you've heard from many of them already today. We have the economic development associations. You've got your workforce partners there at the state level. You got them at the local levels. You got the K-12 systems. You got the four-year universities, such as University of Wyoming. You got unions. There's a lot of different factors when you're trying to put together a sector partnership. And you look at the different things and you look at innovative programs, you know, that you want to kind of partner together to make this sustainable. Anthony mentioned something this morning about starting a program, and you can't get so focused on the program that you can't sustain a training program. So as you're kind of developing these individual or these innovative type programs to kind of put out there, you have to look at it from an approach. Who else could benefit from this? What other sectors can do it? There's a lot of different programs that are put out there, and he had mentioned welders, electricians, mechanical engineering. A lot of institutions or a lot of industry partners need those type of positions, and it's partnering together. So when you're developing that workforce training, the training is actually meaningful to multiple partners. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, in defining sector strategies with partnerships that we do at the college, you know, you have your industry partners. And I cannot stress this enough that you have to have those industry partners. You have to know who those key players are. You develop industry training consortiums. We have in the Southwest Wyoming area, we have a next gen partnership in the manufacturing area, and it's the Southwest Wyoming Manufacturing Partnership. It's a regional industry strategy cluster that focuses on manufacturing related industries, where we get together and kind of determine what is needed and kind of expand that aspect of it. Next slide, please. When you look at partnerships providing engagement, one of the quotes that I found, or the statistics I found, is community colleges are the most frequent cited partners that actually conduct meetings on workforce development issues and convene meetings with business to align skills needed. Community colleges have always been kind of known there as the career and tech ed sector of the industry partners that's providing those skill-based trainings. So these are opportunities for individuals who can come, get their certificate and or degree, or a short-term program through like kind of the workforce development non-credit divisions. And we can do that. The example that I showed here was Rocky Mountain Power. And one of the pieces that I'd like to share as far as a partnership goes, we actually developed a power line program here in Western Wyoming, and it's the only one in the state of Wyoming. This could not have happened without partners such as Rocky Mountain Power. And this specific example is them donating equipment to the college. One of the key elements in doing training programs is having relevant equipment that students can learn on that replicate what is in industry. So this partnership was instrumental, but this partnership didn't happen overnight. It's one that you have to sit there, you have to listen and kind of develop what they're looking for and make sure what their needs are being met with the training program that you're offering. These partnerships also have to work with the workforce boards. As Shay and her team had mentioned, they have a lot of different grants that are available. And one of the pieces that I can't stress enough, and I would highly encourage any businesses on this call to reach out to Ivy, is the Apprenticeship Program. What a great way to kind of tie together what you're doing on the job through that on the job training with the related technical training that you can partner with a four-year institution, you can partner with a community college, you can partner with a private training provider to provide that opportunity, and it gives a person a more well-rounded skill. The other piece that an apprenticeship program does is it's a skill that's transferable. So if you need them to move to another part or a sister company in another state, they have those skills and you know that they're recognized credentials. The other piece that's out there is when you're partnering there, you kind of see it provides opportunities for some joint training or skills development. We partner with the different community colleges here in Wyoming, and Stephanie had mentioned Gillette College and Travis Grubb, who's my counterpart there at Gillette College. He's working on an MSHA training that they're sharing with us to be able to provide to the individuals in our area. That's what partnerships do, and it's no use kind of reinventing the wheel to create different things. It's partnering together and sharing the different resources. Next slide, please. So when you look at the different trends that are out there as far as workforce development goes in relationship to workforce training, you see there that there's a lot more discussions that are happening within the public and private sectors. One of the pieces that we are truly doing in the western portion of the state here is engaging the K-12 system, getting it earlier and earlier on to get them engaged and involved so they understand what the careers are, what education is required for those careers. And you might ask, why is that important to go down to the K-5 or 6 to 8 or the high school arena? A lot of times what happens is nobody even talks to the students until their junior or senior year, which is a little late, because a lot of times math is required for the occupation that they're looking for. If you don't indicate to a student early on for the occupation they're looking for that they need math all 4 years in high school, believe it or not, you lose an awful lot of your math skills when you go to a community college for the first year and you haven't had math in a while. So it's kind of keeping students on track. The other nice feature that's here in the state of Wyoming is you've got the opportunity for dual and concurrent for the high school students. So if you can get to them early enough, kind of help them put them on a pathway, they know what's required and it kind of advances them in that way. The other piece on the trend is that sense of urgency, talk about future workers. As we look at this and we know that retirements are just going to continue to increase, there's that urgency to make sure you stay on the forefront of what our employers are looking for. Nobody wants their employers to leave, so you have to make sure you're meeting the workforce supply to them and making sure that the pipeline is always there. Next slide, please. So increases in collaboration among partners there. We did hear from Shay and her team, which is kind of the Workforce Investment Board there. You got the four-year universities that I mentioned to you, working with the community colleges, and the partnership that we have with UW. It is a partnership that really does include our private businesses as well, and it's thinking outside the box on how we can get to that next level. Partnering again, I mentioned with the middle and high school again to kind of bring that skill set up earlier, and then engagement between partners. Next slide, please. Focusing when you do partnerships on a region, as I mentioned to you, we have the Southwest Wyoming Manufacturing Partnership. You start small and you can expand it. When I first came to Wyoming, I was part of this group and I absolutely love this group. We are focused on, we're doing a manufacturing day on October 7th coming up here. And we've got the middle schools, the high schools, the community members coming out to see what the occupations are within industry. So industry is driving this particular partnership. We are doing career awareness, career engagement, and community engagement all at once. And the whole focus of this is to make sure our community knows what businesses are here, because believe it or not, a lot of times they don't know what the businesses are that are here, what they actually produce, and what kind of skill sets do they need. The other piece that you think of when you think of mines, you think of like, you know, you have to go down in the mine, you have to work down there. Well, there's cybersecurity, there's HR, there's accounting. There's a lot of different occupations that are associated with that mine that aren't necessarily making you work underground. Next slide, please. So as you go through and you engage the businesses here, and as I mentioned to you, your businesses are driving this. You have to sit and kind of focus on what they're looking for. You build the programs around what they need, and that ensures then when you are actually providing the training opportunity to them, those that are completers of the program are actually prepared for the jobs. One of the things that Sharon mentioned was the internship opportunity, and we work with a lot of our industry partners to set them up with internships / co-ops out in industry so they can take what they're learning in the classroom and apply it right away. Where that helps us is through our advisory boards that we do. They can share the feedback with us as well, so we know education can't stand still either. It has to constantly evolve and change. Next slide, please. So my suggestion as you're looking at partners and you think about this, you have to kind of cast your net wide. You have to make sure you're all inclusive. When you're working with the different groups, you have social service agencies. We have Climb Wyoming. We have the Head Start program. We have the Y that we work with. You have to work with all the different agencies that are out there, Department of Human Services. You want to make sure you're not missing any part of the potential workforce pipeline. There are opportunities for everyone. They may not all be the same job, but there are opportunities to fill those voids with companies, and partnerships is how you do that. Again, partnerships within the community, it leads to the buy-in that you need when developing programs, because then you gain the support that you need. Next slide, please. So it all kind of ties back to economic engagement. And as we look at like the different communities and we look at why we want to do workforce training and the workforce development, it's to actually maintain what we have, right? So we concentrate on the industry, and Anthony mentioned that at the very beginning, is concentrating on industry rather than an individual company. You can't develop a training program that is to recruit for workers that is only applicable to one company, because what you're doing is you're kind of pigeonholing yourself. But if you concentrate on an industry rather than that individual company, the same set of skills can be accomplished. You can tailor it to that individual industry, or that individual company, excuse me. But you want to make sure what you're developing is a program that is sustainable and out there for others to do. And this is accomplished by having that broad range of partners. Next slide, please. Again, one of the pieces here, you're identifying need, engaging the partners. Data is so important in this. Again, you can have, and I have said this to industry partners, that I don't believe training is the answer. And you can show that by when you start putting out data out there and what they're looking for. It may be a matter of upskilling their existing employees to kind of be able to handle the new requirements. And that can also be done, again, as Sharon mentioned, with the Incumbent Worker Grant. Next slide, please. So when you look at workforce development activities, we talked about workforce training and the different things that are out there. These are all the things that when you're looking at this as a community college, we can do. We've got the vocational training, we've got job search assistance, which that is a very key element, because a lot of times when you're working with not just the traditional students, but the students who are returning adults, the job search assistant is very key. People don't understand what a resume should include from what it did 20 years ago, what it should look like now, how you actually do an interview, how you should conduct yourself. And doing that job search assistant really does help kind of filter that aspect out. Then we got training for unemployed and underemployed. So a lot of times those can be short-term training programs, because those individuals really want to get back into the workplace. Incumbent worker training, that's the upskilling that I mentioned to you, as far as working with the employers to upskill their existing staff. You got job programs for the disadvantaged, and those can be programs that can be tailored to different industries as well, in different sectors within those industries. You got recruitment and retention visits. This is working with your economic development associations in the area, and we do this a lot as far as like participating in the recruitment and retention visits, because a lot of times when you're looking at bringing new industry or additional industry to your area, they want to know what that labor pool is. And where else are you going to talk about workforce training? A large time is they come to the community college and they want to know what the community college has to offer. I mentioned to you already about internships and co-ops. We do that in almost every one of our career and tech ed programs. And then the apprenticeships, we are working on growing that here in Western Wyoming Community College, the apprenticeship aspect of it, because this, again, is a transferable skill that individuals, when they obtain this information, can take anywhere with them. Next slide, please. So kind of just doing a wrap up on my section here with kind of working with a community college and what we do with workforce training. Our whole goal is to build that talent pipeline. So it's providing the necessary education, training that they need in order to be successful when they finish with us. It's removing those barriers to employment. A large time, a lot of those barriers is just making that connection with our industry partners. And when you have those partnerships with industry, they actually come on site and do the interviews with you there, which is a key element. Expanding labor force, that's the end goal for everybody. Support job retention and career advancement. So again, the college isn't done with you once you get that job. They want to support that job that you're in. And we work with industry partners to provide customized training that kind of keeps enhancing what the individual employee has and build off of that. We prepare the workforce with the necessary skills. A lot of times what you noticed from what 20 years ago was to what today is, you saw that communication and some of those soft skills is kind of what, that's the focus area right now, is to actually educate individuals on how to communicate, how to work together with others, the team building aspect, and the life skills, which is actually balancing the money of what they will make in a potential position, being able to support themselves on their own outside of their parents' house. Customized traditional training, the customer service approach, you have to work together. This is not a sales thing just to make money. This is to better your community and grow. Again, I think I skipped the connect the workers and employers, but that again is doing that aspect of kind of, removing those barriers by doing that. And partnerships. I cannot stress that enough, that you need to rely on your partners, where if you do not have the ability to offer what they're looking for and you do not have the skill sets to do that, rely on your partners to help you out to build that and provide that expertise. So the program that you end up giving is actually what the industry partners need. Next slide, please. This is my contact information, and I'm happy to talk to anybody or communicate with anybody. I just appreciate the time, Devin and Christine.
All right, thank you so much, Amy. That was a fantastic view on this topic from a community college perspective. I appreciate that very much. We do have a few minutes for some questions, and I don't see any new ones in the question and answers dialogue. So I'll reference some of the pre-submitted questions for this. And these are open to any and all of our panelists, of course. And I will admit to biasing the selection of the few questions here at the time we have towards some of the core CM specific information we seek. So the first one, what proactive steps can be taken to set up workforce training opportunities for a rare earth element industry? And what risks do you foresee in doing so if the industry never comes to fruition, or let's say is delayed in its development?
Devin, I can start on that one if you'd like.
Thank you, Amy.
Sure. So one of the proactive approaches that I would take is actually meeting with some of those industry partners, bringing them together, as well as, and I say this because we have this partnership, Devin, as far as the core CM that we're working together on, bringing UW into the picture as well. So it kind of, for example, the Toronto Mines is an excellent example. I'm kind of bringing those industry partners together to kind of talk about what is needed, like as they start to develop these, and really do deep dives into what is needed. Now, what happens if the industry never comes to happen? You have to watch the data sets again, watching the trends to make sure you're staying ahead of the game. Because an example I can share with you, excuse me, we have a nuclear facility that's coming in here in the next, 6-7 years. You have to be ready for that to hit here. So we have to assume that critical elements in the minerals, that industry part is going to take place, right? So you need to have that proactive approach, meeting with partners, figuring out, is there a different type of training set that is needed, having that there, and again, watching how it's going on a political front, as well as kind of just staying ahead of the curve as far as data goes.
Yeah, great, thank you. And I'm glad you brought up the nuclear discussion as well. That's something we all have to consider in this part of the world as that develops.
Right.
A related question, where do you see the most opportunity for employment in the full rare earth element and critical materials supply chain? So something we look at in core CM is the development of supply chains, not just from mining and processing, but downstream to manufacturing and advanced uses, advanced manufacturing of these. And maybe Stephanie, do you have input on that? It's open to all, but I was thinking Stephanie, with her experience at Upton and the Bear Lodge, and some of those considerations might be relevant.
Actually, that's a question that Tiger Transfer and the Upton Economic Development Board have approached. we're very interested in looking at developing an industry similar to what Tennessee and Kentucky did with the automotive industry, where the state got involved and made sure that they had, they basically secured the whole process from nuts to bolts, and had the manufacturer, co-located the manufacturer, the suppliers, and actually an innovation center as well. So if you go to Tennessee or Kentucky to their automotive, some of their factories, they've got the whole chain right there. And so I think what I've heard from some of the team members on CORE-CM is they'd like to bring basically products to commercialization. And I think that would be, why not? I mean, if you're producing the raw materials and the technology, why not bring as much of that value added product manufacturing process to Wyoming? And that's how we're looking at it from Upton.
Yeah, thank you. And I saw you, Stephanie touched on, and others touched on this too, the different age groups and experience groups to be considered in workforce training for this type of developing industry. And I think that is a significant overlap. You'll have different skills in these different facets of industry, and those appear to be good fits with all the planning taking place here. One more question, as we do have a little bit of time. What workforce training programs currently exist in Wyoming that could easily be applied to a rare earth and critical minerals industry? And I know some of the Wyoming State folks, Ivy, Shay, and Sharon talked about this, but maybe we could go a little more in depth into that. What are we positioned with in Wyoming currently for that?
Yeah, like I had touched on, we have a lot coming into the pipeline with manufacturing expanding and the support that's out there for manufacturing. And really right now, we've worked with a few different employers across the state in the mining and the energy industry, and specific to, the rare earth elements and the minerals, we were looking at, these current businesses, what apprenticeship programs can we look at? I'm the apprenticeship plug, so I have to talk about apprenticeship, sorry. But really, the Department of Labor has a plethora of already pre-approved programs that companies and businesses coming to Wyoming with this focus can actually adopt and actually customize to be a better fit for their companies. And I pulled just a few from the DOL list, like mining engineer, mining mechanical operators, heavy equipment operators, manufacturing engineers, industrial production managers, industrial engineer, technologists, and technicians. So that's just a handful that we already have pre-approved that could be adopted by, the work that's already being done with REE. And I think that there's, a great opportunity with the grants that we have available to support what's already happening in Wyoming and the expansion of that.
And I would add, thank you, Ivy. I would add that as you're diving more into it and learning more of the specifics of those needs, we can certainly discuss the pre-hire grant to get some individuals trained up prior to getting that employment with those businesses. And then again, the business training grants are a great fit.
Yeah, thank you. And I really appreciate the presentation on the details within those grants. It's something some of our stakeholder and partners in the CORE-CM projects have reached out about. How do they access funds? We see a lot both in the federal and state funding pipelines. It's something we've discussed having an additional webinar about. So it's good that came up, and certainly a viable pathway. So I was excited to see that. Something we're familiar with here at UW as well, going after those funding dollars. Well, let's see, we have about 5 minutes left. So I wanted to first thank all of our panelists today. That was a huge amount of information. I can tell there's a lot embedded in all you presented for further discussion. I would encourage attendees today and those viewing this recorded session later to submit additional questions if they come to mind, and we'll try to distribute those to our panelists and gain answers from these experts. I know we're all very busy, but I find this topic in particular to be critical to our core CM efforts here at the University of Wyoming. I'm sure we'll be working on this together very soon as we develop our strategic plans and include all of you experts in those. I did want to invite any and all of you to attend our annual forum for the Green River Basin, Wind River Basin Core CM project. Again, that's October 20th, Western Wyoming Community College. Amy is helping us set that up. We do have breakout sessions in the afternoon. Those will not be recorded like this, but they will be open discussion sections. And one of those is workforce development and training focused. So I would encourage those of you who would like to work on those topics and discuss those topics to register and attend that session. It'd be a great expansion of what we talked about today. With that, are there any additional last questions or anything else we wanted to mention before we close out today's webinar? Okay. Well, thank you again, everybody. I really appreciate your time. Oh, I do see one final question from Patrick. Do you have a sense of how many applicants have in-house grant writers versus just regular business owners? That's a great question, which we can field in the last minutes here.
That is a great question, and I would say that it's definitely across the board. A lot of our smaller businesses, those owners are the ones that are looking into the grant opportunities and completing those applications. But I would say that the bigger businesses definitely have somebody that's dedicated to the applications, whether it's their full-time official title or they've been handed it and asked to do it. But generally, I would say that the larger business is definitely easier to work with a designated individual that is doing all the different grant applications, just to have a consistency with how they're putting the information in the applications. But we also have across the board a lot of smaller businesses where the owners or the managers or family members are actually doing those applications. So it's quite the gamut.
If I could jump in and just kind of supplement what you said, Sharon. First of all, I just think it's a fabulous program. I mean, our little town is really enjoying taking advantage of the internship grant. And our Northeastern Wyoming Small Business Development Center rep offered to assist if any of our businesses needed assistance, if we couldn't handle it out of the Upton Economic Development Board team. So far, we've been able to handle it locally, but that might be another resource for some of your small businesses to see if any of the other SBDC reps would be available to help as well.
Thank you.
Oh, piggyback on that too, Stephanie. From a community college perspective, I know I've offered to help in our area as well. So I think sometimes it's just, again, it's that partnership and knowing where your resources are to connect with.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
just to
thank you.
put it out there as well, we are definitely available to give that technical assistance as well and help people walk through. But we really appreciate when there's other entities that are interested and willing to do that. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. That was very informative. The opportunities are certainly there. They're being developed, and I think you're spot on with partnerships and exchanging ideas and experience to be successful. So we'll continue this discussion in 3 weeks in Rock Springs. We'll have additional webinars in this series for our core CM programs. And again, thank you all for attending. Thank you to our panelists. We appreciate your time today.